Yeah, we are certainly happy to do it. So, hey, Chuck is here.
Yay! I'm loud on the comments, but oh, there go my headphones. Hang on. Built in.
Okay, Chuck wins the prize for having the best microphone.
Yeah, well, I produce 11 podcasts every week, so.
How do you even sleep?
I pay other people to produce the podcast every week. Anyway, I've been trying to make it to these meetings, but I just haven't been able to swing it till tonight.
No, it's all good. It's kind of one of those, they've, been kind of short notice typically, and that's not helped, I'm sure, getting people there.
Yep. So, yeah. What have we accomplished so far?
Well, I think given we're 5 after, we might as well start, and then we can kind of go through everything. So thus far, where we're at on the process, I've been doing a lot of review and digging of all of the various processes and rules and laws and regulations, and it is mind-numbing stuff to read, unfortunately.
God bless you.
But it's one of those things that there is going to be a very, very defined process we're going to have to follow going forward, and it's going to be a multi-step process. So we have to do a number of things. We have to actually dissolve the corporation. We also have to vote out the existing CC&Rs, and then we have to separate the board. So it's those 3 steps. I am sure that there are probably 3 to 5 other legal steps that will be involved, but that's part of our part of the big battle here. I have asked the question to the HOA, and I'm hoping to hear from them when we have the town hall. If the majority of the membership comes and says, look, we want the HOA to go away. We want let's make the HOA and the CC&Rs and everything go away. Let's put us back to city control. Everybody's happy, or most people will be happy. And let's go with that as our main point there. I'm hoping that if we have enough support behind it, that we will have a full-blown support from the board to, instead of paying this attorney, for endless rewrites, let's go ahead and the membership has spoken. We're going to change tack and go that way with it. They should do that. That's kind of the job there. Additionally, the attorney that they are using has done this very process before. This is not new to them. They have separated HOAs out into their constituent parts before. In fact, somebody at one point had made a comment, and I want to say it was Jordan Willows Neighborhood Friends or Jordan Willows Discussions about that, and recommended this attorney. And then that's when we got informed that there would be a conflict of interest, because that's the attorney that that they're using to do all the rewrites. So, the fact that they come recommended by a number of other entities and other homeowners associations that have had issues, certainly, that at least is beneficial, so that if we have to, change tack and get the board on to support that methodology going forward, then great. We already have the law firm to do it. So that's kind of where we're at with that part of things. Additionally, we have, I don't know how many of you have driven by our house back on Oak Crest and seen the big Disband the HOA banner on the front of our home. I'm sure that ticks off certain board members every time they drive by. And if it does, then, well, I'm not going to feel any sympathy there. We have also set up a GoFundMe to raise donations. We just ordered 100 of the smaller yard signs to get distributed throughout the neighborhood. And I've spoken with, I know we just ordered one more of the big banners for one of the benefactors of the GoFundMe, who's wanted one. And then Tanner Nelson, who lives up right by the monument entrance, has mentioned putting one in his yard because there's so much traffic right there. And he's on a corner facing the monument entrance. So there would be a substantial amount of traffic by his house. In order to pay for those, they're about $125 a piece in order to do them out of mesh and have them be, weather resistant and very durable. We have, like I say, set up a GoFundMe to just help cover costs on that. We have ponied up between John and I, a substantial amount of money. You think about, domains, web hosting. We have picked up a higher quality paper. So as we move into the flyer section, I'll cover that. But, just stuff like that we've been doing in order to make sure that we have ourselves represented in the best possible light. I know we've got a couple of members who were at some of the other various meetings who are working on trying to get the contact list from the HOA, specifically from Parker Brown, with mailing addresses for each lot and the lot owner. That's more important because we have a few people who do not live in the neighborhood, they rent. And a few people that I've talked to, that has been a point of contention, that are renters, because they've had issues with Parker Brown as renters. And of course, that's caused some friction between them and their landlords getting mad at renters. And it was all something that was really, menial, as everybody here has just about at some point experienced the wrath of Parker Brown in the last year. So we're kind of there as far as the signs should be here, I believe on the 17th is what tracking says. Jonathan could, I'm sure, correct me on that.
Yes, around the 17th.
So we should have those then. We're also trying to have flyers ready for the 17th. I've sent them out to a number of various people who've been involved with the movement so far, just to get opinions. They are, I'll just briefly, basically, I want you to help disband the HOA. Text on the back about, we need your help, things like that. And, one thing that we need to make sure, and we stress this to people, is respect, no matter what the opinion. As I know Chuck has run into this, it's the respect everybody's opinion. If somebody comes to me and says, no, I want the HOA. I moved here specifically for the HOA. Okay, tell me why. I'm all ears. I actually want to know why. Now, granted, part of that is I want to know why, so I know how to craft my argument as to why we don't need the HOA. That's something that we've worked pretty heavy duty on. And that's, certainly people just tend to respond better. If you're arguing with them and saying, well, no, you're wrong, and getting, argumentative or getting, yelling at them or calling them names or any of that, nobody wins. So this has got to be a campaign of trying to make sure that we are, above board on everything. We're transparent with everything we do, including on the Disband the HOA website. I've even created a tab for budget so that as we rack up expenses, they can get posted there so that people can go in and say, oh, wow, that's what was spent so far in this battle. And John and I, we know that we're going to wind up, with a fair amount of the expenses, and that is part of it. I did set up a Venmo account this morning, which I've despised Venmo for a while, but one member wanted to send payment in that way. And so that was We've done that. And I certainly can link my PayPal and stuff like that. And of course, cash, I guess, is always welcome. It's just in the COVID era, cash is one of those things that I'm kind of like, let's just kind of keep that on the down low, unless that's the only way somebody has to help. And there's going to be a lot of need for people to go with physical help, old fashioned labor help. We want to make sure that we're getting out and getting in front of our neighbors. We'll print the flyers. I've picked up about 1,000 sheets of a much heavier quality paper. We're going to go ahead, and we've got high-speed color laser printers here, so we'll get those churning probably on Sunday, I would guess, tomorrow or maybe Monday morning, and just try and crank those out. It'll probably take half an hour tops to really bust those out. It's mainly doing them in batches in case there's a glitch someplace. And then at that point, those are ready to be distributed. And that's the initial is going to be a door-to-door. We'll break it up and kind of give everybody, who wants to be involved in that process, a section. You've got these 2 blocks here. Somebody else has got, further down the street, or, it's one of those. I have spinal cord injuries, so let's face it, a couple of blocks and I'm done usually. And so that'll be the, if we split it up and take the theory of many hands make light work, then, it'll go quick. And I know of at least 4 or 5 other people who were like, no, we'll go door to door, no problem. So the more people that help, that'll be, we'll put that out as a call to action as we get closer to that point. So that's kind of where we're at with the flyers in general. One thing I wanted to talk about is the speed at which this process probably needs to happen, and I'll explain why. So as we start moving through this process, and the rewrite process as well, and this is a point that certainly I'm hoping that the HOA will address in general, but anybody who's trying to sell a house right now is going to wind up with an issue. Do you communicate? Theoretically, you've been served the proposed CC&Rs. So do you give them the existing ones that are in force right now, but also tell the potential buyer that, but there's this possible of these other CC&Rs, but there's also this possibility that the HOA could just disband completely. So, in an effort to not have this affect people over, they're talking about a year potentially to get rewrites through the process, get things situated, for CC&Rs, assuming that they could actually get something that everybody would sign off on. And that's a year of uncertainty. I don't have a real estate license, but I would be willing to bet you have to disclaim that. I would be shocked if you did not. And I wouldn't want to move into the neighborhood and then all of a sudden have all this dropped on us, that much further down the road because this is going on. So we want to make sure that we're trying to move with utmost speed, but at the same time, make sure that we have all our facts, all our documents, all of our, our information correct, so that we're not pulling a fast one on the neighbors. We want everybody to have the utmost information. At our, I believe it was second call, if John might, was that one Reed, or was that the first call?
That was the second one.
Reed Hassan was here, and he actually said that the proposed CC&Rs that went out, there was a lot of stuff that was nixed out of that document, such as the 48-hour right to entry. And they've addressed that. Stan Rasmussen has released a proposed, taking some of those things out on the official from the board, at least. And that was kind of one of those points of, well, hold on, you really, I don't get it. You didn't proofread the document. You didn't vet the document. You didn't have multiple people confirm the document before you sent it out to 634 homes. That seems to be a pretty major major screw up. We do not want to repeat that on our side of the coin here. And I want to make it, plainly known too, that this is not an us versus them. The board are people who live here. They're generally speaking pretty good people. They have their view on how things should be run, and it may not line up with the vast majority of the neighborhoods. And so this is that opportunity to go ahead and move on from the HOA, or at bare minimum try to pass something that would, I don't know how many of you have seen Chris Condi's proposal, but it was basically, let's take away the punitive efforts of the HOA. Let's make it just a real simple, rewards for doing good yard work. Let's boost things like that. Try and not make it an enforcement arm, but make it, something positive, and really minimize the effects of it. And I would even go so far as to say, and then on top of that, add things like term limits. And currently, you run for board, and I know Chuck Wood knows this, you've run for board, you run for one of 5 slots. You don't know what slot you're going to end up. And if your other 4 mates don't like you on the board, they're going to make you the member at large. They're not going to put you in as president. Typically the president and vice president have been Chris and Derek pretty much exclusively, at least for the last 5 years since John and I moved in 5.5 years. And that's been something that, again, if you ran for a specific position, that I think would require more involvement from the neighbors. I don't know. I know Chuck has been to the annual meeting. I don't know if I've seen you there, James or Selena, but
Are they doing one this year?
Nothing has been announced as of yet. They have to give us a certain amount of notice. I believe by state law it's 30 days, but don't quote me on that. But they have to give
the bylaws still say June, by the way, but they've been doing them in January.
Right. Typically what has the last few years, what has been happening is when we get the reminder for our annual dues, it's also included in that same envelope, probably in an effort to decrease postage. Let's send stuff out once and stuff. And then having it in like late February, early March type of thing.
And that's been something that they have moved it up according to the bylaws. They are allowed to, they are able to move it up, but it can be no later than.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So, and that's again, I don't mind that. In fact, I kind of enjoyed when they moved it up because it was, let's get this business for the year done. Now, this will probably interest you, Chuck, based on some comments that you wrote the other day on Neighborhood Friends. I want to reference, I think you called it the incompetence, the I word. And so some frustration, we've done some, because we are, we're true nerds. We sit here, and when somebody pisses us off, we tend to be a bulldog on a bone and dig every aspect at every possible thing that's going on. But if you go look at the corporate records for the HOA itself, when the HOA was filed with the new officers in January or February, when Jill Gold and those were elected to the board, they have to upload a new filing for that lists who the officers are. We've now had the board change 3 or 4 times in the last year. That document has never been updated. So according to the Secretary of State's office and Utah County, we still have officers of Nick Lovelace, Larry Kettenring, and Joe Gold, along with Derek and Chris. We don't have Stan on there. We don't have Jason. We don't have any of those. So that's I thought you might find that interesting, just based on, the I word.
And In fact, the date of the latest filing was June 29th of 2020, which was 4 months after those officers were elected.
So that I thought you might find that interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my issue was just I had somebody come to me and say, "You're being insulting," and I was just like, "Well, I calling them out because they haven't been doing their jobs, right? I'm not trying to say anyone's stupid or bad or poorly motivated or anything like that, and I just wanted to make sure that people knew it wasn't personal. But at the same time, if we're not shouting it out, then it's not going to get fixed. And yeah, this does speak to that. I'm also on a school board, and we have to refile every year, with a new list of board members and everything else. And so I get that process.
So that I kind of figured you would appreciate that point, just because it does speak to that. And when you have a rotating, set of board members, I mean, let's face it, it takes how long to get into the groove? It probably takes a few months to get into the groove each time that there's a change in the board. And that's one of those things that's just, it's baffling to me. They want to stagger board members. Okay, that means that every year you're going to waste what, probably 2 months of a 2-year term, or of that year, trying to get everybody back into the groove, the new members into the groove, assuming that there's that much turnover on the board. And that's just not efficient, not to mention, of course, right now they want to only review ACC applications once a month at their monthly meeting. But guess what? You file it, construction has to be done within 30 days, and they only have 30 days to respond to it. Well, if you happen to mail it in and it gets there one day after that 30, now they're not even going to talk about it until day 29. They're not going to get a response. And if the response is not sent within 30 days, it goes into automatic disallowed status. Most HOAs, it actually would go into automatic allowed status. That, forces the board to actually do something. So I thought, that was one of those things that we kind of thought was, an interesting point. But, I knew you'd get a kick out of that, Chuck.
Yeah, the turnover thing is pretty standard for boards, and it's mostly just so that somebody can't stage a coup and cause major issues with authority. But I also see the other point, because yeah, we struggle with that on the board I'm on too. The issue is it seems like it's people from the same little group, or their relatives that are the ones that are getting elected every time. So, and that's not healthy either.
Oh no, I agree. It is definitely the same little clique of people over and over, and that's, it is a frustrating scenario, because even when we've had other people run, you ran last year and the year before, I believe, if memory serves.
Yeah, and to be clear, when I ran, I didn't run because I wanted to be on the board. I ran because I got tired of the people on the board telling me, well, if you don't like it, get involved. And I applied to be on committees and they never took me. So I ran for board. And I'm just like, well, maybe this is harder than I thought. And so maybe I need some perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
John ran to be on the board some time ago. I would have certainly run. At this point, we probably wouldn't run. Part of that becoming an insurance issue. Most people don't realize that if you're elected to any board, any kind of elected position, and of course, Chuck, you're subject to this being on school board, you cannot have an umbrella liability policy. You just can't do it, and it sucks. You can't have that extra insurance because there's the potential as an elected official that you can get sued. And so no insurance company will touch you with a 10-foot pole, short of what they want to do in the proposed CCNRs, which is provide extra insurance for themselves because of that. And that, I hate to say I wouldn't get involved with the board itself at this point because of that. There are, let's face it, I'm not a dumb person. We've been spearheading this effort now for 2 weeks, and look at where we're at. We're driving the point hard to make sure that people are aware of what's going on. You know, I want every vote, and I want to know that when we get to that end vote, that, you know, that final number, that 634 votes are counted, that whatever we did was our best effort, and that we made sure people understood our point. You know, and the point is, you know, we're not going to lose that, but you know, I will do everything in my power to make sure we don't lose that. But that's, you know, that's kind of a frustrating thought, you know, is you never know. The people who live in this neighborhood, I was going to write a post for our website a couple days ago, and I just haven't quite done it because I have these moments of inspiration. And one of them was HOAs in general, I feel, make lazy neighbors. You expect the HOA to take care of making sure your neighbor's yard is clean and they've got their garbage cans in and they don't have a junk car parked in front of their house and there's no, you know, obnoxious parties. And you expect the HOA to do all of that, so you don't feel the need to go walk over to your neighbors and talk to them. You know, we're fortunate on our block here. Everybody knows everybody. You know, other than there's one house that moved in during COVID, and then, you know, everybody's tried to just kind of keep their distance and not go pounding on the door and going, "Hey, we're your neighbors." But that's, you know, everybody pretty much knows everybody on the block, and it's great. I mean, I don't understand why we don't have more of that. And as we've talked to other people throughout the neighborhood through this process, you know, what was Claudia, you know, that needed a hard copy of the documents, and John and I just went and we're like, okay. So we printed off a copy and ran it over to her like within 20 minutes of her requesting it, or, you know, John having a conversation with her. We're like, yeah, we'll bring it. And that's what neighbors should do. This was like 7:30 at 8 o'clock at night. That's what neighbors should do. And I feel like people have become lazy neighbors just because the HOA is there. And without having the HOA there, then we're forced to be a little more neighborly. You're forced to know your people.
You know, and to reiterate that point, you know, you would get a much different approach of, you know, a neighbor, "Hey, Chuck, I'm your neighbor 2 doors down. I see you've been working on this big project. You know, I live right down the street from you. I realize you don't have a truck. We have 2 pickup trucks. Would you like us to help you get some of the stuff to the dump? You know, hey, what day works for you? You know, we'll figure something out. We'll load it up. We'll help you haul it to the dump." You know, you would get a much different reaction of neighbors helping neighbors that way. I'm sure you would totally agree with that, Chuck.
Yep, absolutely. The other thing that I've seen is that, like, when I'm working on a project, sometimes they'll come over and they'll say, "Well, I've been trying to figure out how to do this in my yard," right? And then I wind up going and helping them. And it's that kind of thing, right? Or someone will post to Facebook and say, "Hey, I need a blah blah blah," and it's like, "Well, I live 2 doors down. Can I help you with that?" And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really like the interaction that I have with my neighbors. And if I have a good relationship, the other thing is if my neighbor's yard looks bad, I'll go over and say, "Hey, can I help you get the weeds out of your yard?" Or, "Hey, can I help you?" You know, and I mean, the people that I've heard about calling the HOA on their neighbors because they didn't mow their yard and it's like half an inch too long, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding. You can't just go over there or send one of your kids over there with your lawnmower and just mow it for them. I don't know. It's frustrating because they put all this on the HOA instead of, yeah, being good neighbors and just being helpful.
Well, that's to go on to that point, you know, Kathleen Maceros. Um, Most people have met her. She's this, you know, absolutely the sweetest person on earth. And she was having some problems like 2 summers ago with her weed eater. And we drive right by her house every day. She's right there on the corner of Olive and I don't know what's the road that goes out the backside of the neighborhood from phase 2 towards the alley. Is that River? Anyways, or Water. But she lives over on that corner. And so as we would drive by, we would see You
I
know,
live in South Jordan.
there you go. So we would see that she had, you know, some issues. And so one day we just stopped and we're just like, hey, you know, do you have a weed eater? Do you need help? You know, I can generally tinker on a piece of machinery and get it to work. And, you know, so it's like, is that the issue? Or do you just not have time? Do you not have the ability, you know? And she was just like, our weed eater just won't run. I was like, that's fine. I'm mowing tomorrow. Tell your kids if they see somebody weird in the backyard, I'll just bring my weed eater over and trim it. And all summer long, I did that. You know, every time we mowed and went out and trimmed, I just loaded up my stuff in the truck, drove around the block, and came to the other side and went and helped. And that's what it should be about. You know, that's what we should be doing for neighbors. We shouldn't need an HOA to tell us to be good neighbors. We should be able to just do it. And I think most people can do it. It's just getting that point of that, you know, we feel lazy, so to speak. But other than that, you know, it's as we're going forward. So our big things are going to be the yard signs coming on the 17th. John just went
The FedEx shipping just updated for the signs. Those will be here on the 17th. The actual stands, just little wire stands to put them on. Those will be here like Monday.
So we'll have those here, and we can, you know, start getting those out. There's 100 of them. I know, you know, some of them are certainly spoken for with people who've helped with donations, but no, you know, there's a lot of them that haven't been. And so as we, you know, move forward, we'll try and do that. And then my goal is to have kind of the wire sign or the yard signs and the flyers all ready to go, so that it's kind of an integrated process of, okay, you know, we can go out, do flyers, and those who want a yard sign, that, you know, if we have enough of them available, you know, the ones that aren't spoken for already, it's like, okay, yeah, hey, we'll put one in your yard, you know. Even on the first or second call when we had Reed and we had Stan, and apparently we had Jason Moss on the call as well. You know, we kind of reiterated, it's like, okay, yeah, we have one banner in our front yard. Great. You know, that affects the people who drive back here, but that's not that many. I mean, we're back on Oakcrest. But if we have, you know, if you have one sign a block, okay, you're going to get some interest in people kind of going, okay, what's this? You have 2 signs per block. More people are going to see it and go, okay, there's something going on here. Maybe I ought to check and see what's going on. And then, you know, if you have 5 signs per block, you know, the more times people see it, eventually they're going to make that association and jump and go, okay, I need to see what's going on. We spoke to, over the course of this process, I think 3 different neighbors who did not, they knew that there was something going on process wise. They had no idea what the actual document was. They had no idea what was, you know, in the proposals. They had no idea. And it was like, you need to go read that. And that's something that this is an informational campaign at this point. We are going to hit the point of going door to door and trying to, you know, garner support. At this point, we're still trying to get everybody to the point of, have you read this? And that goes for renters too. I want the renters to read it, because if the renters read it and they go, but this is going to affect what I'm doing in the house that I'm renting. Hey, landlord, what's the story with this? The renters can help apply some pressure back to their landlords as well. So that's kind of where we're at this point. Is all that stuff should be happening, you know, ready to go. I would assume somewhere around 17th, 18th. I know the town hall is the 18th, evening of the 18th. You know, I hope everybody had submitted some sort of feedback or questions to the HOA. They are taking that stuff seriously. I've written 2 separate emails, and they were pretty in depth from the technical side of things. They were a lot more of the asking about the legal aspects and the ramifications of what happens if my understanding of this rule is correct or that law is correct, or, pretty extensive. I kid you not, I have a binder that's probably 3 inches thick that will be full of documentation from this. Um, so for those who don't know, also, I wanted to go ahead and just put this point out there. Chuck, I don't even think knows unless you've read some of the longer posts, but at one point over the years or another, everybody has been clamoring for us to have better communications, and even the board has promised better communication.
Yeah, I had a fit at the meeting 3 years ago,
Sounds
and that's when they started sending pictures with violations.
correct. And part of that was, we kind of said, well, okay, fine. When we first moved in, there was a physical newsletter that was quarterly, and we loved that. It was awesome. It was nice to have that information. And there was enough room on that newsletter for, a little section that was the calendar of events coming up. And hey, this is a project that the HOA is working on. And, oh, and there's going to be an Eagle Scout project counting geese in the ponds, if you want to help, or suggestions for, whatever. It was just a nice neighborly, communication. And that went away. And, we raised objections at the time. John and I did, I know. And we were really frustrated. And they were like, oh, it's going to be Facebook. And Facebook went along okay for a little while with them posting things, for a few months. And then they stopped posting every little thing like they were doing in the newsletters. And pretty soon it was like, oh, well, fine. And then they switched from Advantage to Vision, is it Advantage to Vision, I believe. And then it was like, oh, well, we're just going to do this all email. Well, do you have everybody's email? And even now, I've had it confirmed from one of the members of the board during one of our calls that they have about 60% of the emails is all. There's a vast portion of people that they don't have emails to. And so and that includes John and I due to some issues we've had with them. So if you're all of a sudden, you only have 60% of the emails, you're only communicating with 60% of the group. So John and I had in 2018 at actually an emergency meeting here in our home, offered two things to the board. The first was we offered to do the newsletter at no cost to the HOA. No cost. We would pay for the paper. We'd pay for the toner. I have experience in graphics design stuff. So doing the layouts, once I have the base layout done anyways, it takes 2 seconds to update the information, place the documents in, and, and it's like with them giving us the content. We offered that. The only thing they would have to pay for if they wanted to was postage if they wanted to mail it. If they wanted to do a door-to-door campaign, hell, we would have even helped with that because we wanted to see better communication. The other thing was a website. We had in late 2016 or early 2017 registered the domains jordanwillowshoa.com.net.org.info because they were on the open market. Our initial intent was, hey, we're going to protect these in case the HOA wants to use them in the future. We own them, at this point, but hey, that we can help do the website. It takes, no effort from us to do that. As you can see, had to stand up a whole new server and all of that stuff and get that all up and running. I think it took 3.5 days to go from nothing to disband the HOA being up and functional. And that's doing that at home on my laptop because John is up working in the office. So I don't even have access to my desk and my big multi-monitors and all that stuff. But so we had also offered to go ahead and do a website specifically for the HOA. Let's bring all of this communication to one spot. The newsletter and a website. And the website is something where they could control the content. We'll post it. We'll, all of that, or we'll show them how to post whatever they need to post. And, that would also allow them to have the tie-in to put a link to, whatever processing company they were using for the payments, for any of that kind of stuff. And again, we offered to do all of that at no cost. We were already paying for the domain anyways, So we would have been paying for hosting. Whoop-de-doo. If it was going to be a long-term project like that, we would have just stood up, a physical server in our own home, and gone at it that way, or whatever it took. It wasn't going to be a big deal, and so we offered that, and they said, this meeting was in like October or November of 2018, and the response was, okay, thank you, we'll talk about it and we'll get back to you. And we thought, okay, they're going to take this seriously, and never heard anything back. So at the annual meeting the next year, which was in January or February of 2019, we once again reiterated that was when Chris Martin came back onto the board after his 1-year hiatus. And we kind of reiterated the offer and said, hey, look, we offered this. We've never heard anything. No response ever again from that. And that was pretty frustrating. So we finally just went, well, if they can't even give us a response, well, screw it. We're not going to make the offer again. And, the communication was there. So at some point this year, we had talked with one of the former board members who was in the know. And the response that was basically, what? Nobody told you? And we're going, no. And the response was, well, they didn't want a private citizen doing it. And my thought process back was, but yet the board members who claim that they're just regular private citizens like the rest of us and don't have any extra rights, any of that kind of stuff. You guys are private citizens too, as board members. And we never got an answer back on that, or never got a response back on that. So these were things that we had offered to try and help improve communication. As you've noticed, if I get into a pissing match with somebody on Facebook or whatever, we can have the information disseminated over 3 different groups and a website and Nextdoor, all within, half an hour, 45 minutes across all of those media platforms, and try and hit as many neighbors as possible, not to mention uploading it to the website along with however things go. So that was one of those things that most people in the neighborhood had no idea had ever gone on. We typically have, even with everything John and I have been through with the HOA, and I know, Chuck, you've gone through some, I'm sure everybody's gone through some battle with the HOA, but we've always tried to just kind of go, okay, you know what, we get to a point of resolution, good, bad, or other, and we finally just tuck the little nugget away and go, okay, it's done. We're not dealing with it. We're pissed about whatever happened, but whatever. And a lot of this came to a head back in when we put in a little lean-to shed in our backyard next to our bigger shed, and there was all sorts of issues. Long story short, they delayed getting the response for the ACC application to us. It came outside of the 30-day window, which also means we missed our construction date for our shed. Because of that, it got pushed out like till almost in fact, it was New Year's Eve when they finally finished it. But because we had gotten pushed out, Tough Shed at the time had gone through a price increase, and we had incurred, because of the HOA's delay, a $501 difference in the cost of our shed. We had asked for relief for that, basically pointing out in documentation, look, this is the HOA's fault that this happened. If the response had come in an appropriate time frame in an appropriate manner, we would not have been, incurred that delay. We were met with a response from Parker Brown that basically said, no. And if you try and sue us or do any kind of legal action, we will assess your home for the full cost of any legal action. At which point it was like, okay, game on.
Right. The other thing too is when we finally got a response, it was postmarked after the 30 days. It was like on day 32. And if you look back at the date of the signature of the approval on the ACC and the postmark, it sat in Parker Brown for 6 days.
So you kind of you can kind of see, okay, again, we're talking about the I word. We're talking about that incompetent function. And this happened, that part of the process happened when it was only the 3 board members, Chris, Derek, and Larry Kettering on the board. In fact, after we got that back, we realized we were going to be way outside of our 30-day start window, even if we said, okay, that approval was valid. Because of COVID, we had gotten pushed out so far that we immediately filled out a new document with our new start date and sent that in, which, gave plenty of time for them to respond to it. And we got the document from Parker Brown, the signed ACC form, back within like 6 days. So it's like, we know you can do this fast. Why didn't you do it fast in the first place? At the same time, we sent a 54-page document, stapled all of these copies of envelopes and legal responses and all of that to every board member's home of record at the time, which was Chris, Derek, and Larry Kettering.
The 50, yeah, that was right. For the 54 pages, those 3.
Correct. We literally get home that night, and because we had updated it and put in their emails, the Jordan Willows HOA at gmail.com, for the tracking and updates, so that they would get tracking updates, because we sent them priority mail. So they were getting bombarded with tracking updates. Suddenly, after we get home, the Facebook page is updated with new officers, which then bumped Larry off the board, and then Stan and Jason were added to the board. And at that point, we're like, well, we're not going to send it to Stan and Jason, because they didn't deserve that at that point. We didn't feel, so we kind of left it at that. Never got, a response, nothing. So just before Christmas, we submitted another letter, this time to the 4 board members of record at the time, again, which was Chris, Derek, Stan, and Jason. A simple, like 2-page letter requesting an emergency meeting, giving them 7 days from the time that they received it to respond back to us in writing, which no big deal, saying, the meeting would take place on such and such day at such and such time. We would host the Zoom call. Again, no response. So after we passed that window and we're, like 5 days out from the supposed meeting, I sent an email to the board with the Zoom call information. Within, 24 hours, we had a response back from the board with, and I'm sure you've heard this exact terminology, Chuck, we're not going to talk about this anymore, because that makes it go away by saying, we're not going to talk about this anymore.
Yeah. Well, my story is a little bit different, but I kept getting notices for unsightly storage, whatever that means. And I'd get one, and I'd clean stuff up in my yard, and I'd get one the next month. And so I'd clean more stuff up in my yard, just thinking, okay, well, maybe it's this, right? I posted to Facebook, and I said, maybe you neighbors can help me out. And Rob Haslam's a good friend of mine, and he'd been on the HOA board. So I thought maybe he had, the eye for this stuff, right? And he drives by my house, and he's like, well, I saw this, and this, but if it's not any of those things. And I'm like, well, I've moved 2 of those things. Right. And so finally, he's like, well, you need to get a hold of Derek Farnes. And so I get a hold of Derek, and Derek comes over and he points out a couple of things. And he also mentioned something about the swing set that we had pulled apart out of a neighbor's yard. They had sold it to us, and I just hadn't gotten around to putting it up yet. But where it was sitting was where the HOA had told us we could put it 2 years earlier. And it was just a different management company, I think. I don't know for sure, because I didn't know who was on the board at the time. So I pretty much ruled that out, but I kept getting the notices. And so finally I showed up at the board meeting, and I'm like, I've had it, right? You people keep giving me these notices, but I'm not getting any clear indication as to what the issue is. And they're like, well, we review each one. The board does. And so I'm like, okay, well, then you should know what it is. Well, we have no idea. And I'm like, and so I was like, well, why don't you send pictures out? And this was all in the meeting, in the owners meeting, because they were like, well, can we talk about this afterward? And I'm like, no, this is the first time I've had your attention. So anyway, we get done. I had a whole bunch of people come up to me and say, yeah, what they're doing is not cool, right? They should be telling you what the issue is directly, right? So Derek comes back over to my house, you know, still don't get any clarity on this stuff. And so finally the notices start going away. I don't hear anything back from them. And I hadn't really changed anything. So then I start getting pictures of that same side of my house, right? So they start sending me pictures of the side of my house. I'm like, okay, we had a composter sitting over there. You know, we cut down the weeds that were over there. You know, I've put down weed barriers since then. Still don't know. I finally just put a fence up on that side of the house. I put up 2 gates so they can't even see back there. That was my solution. You can't see it anymore. Whatever it is, you can't see it anymore. And then they hired Parker Brown, and this hasn't come up yet. But this is what really pissed me off, was that I got the notice from Parker Brown with my statement on it, stating that there were $2,000 worth of fines from previous violations that never got solved. And my issue is I still don't know what the issue was. I have no idea. And so at the end of the day, Parker Brown starts bothering me. Are you going to pay this? Are you going to pay this? Are you going to pay this? And my answer was always no, no, no. And finally, yeah, I got well, we're not going to talk about this anymore. I got that from the board and I got it from Parker Brown. And I basically told them they would have to sue me and explain to the judge what the problem was in the first place. So anyway, it just, to me, felt like I could never get a direct answer from the board, that they didn't really care. And yeah, I got we don't want to talk about this anymore, 2 management companies ago, until they try to collect on those, things. And I finally said, if you want it, you're going to have to sue me for it. And then I got we don't want to talk about it anymore again. So yeah, I mean, that's where it goes. I don't really have a problem with any one person on the board, but their communication has been abysmal. Also, I offered to help them run an email newsletter. I offered to host basically a call from the HOA, in kind of a podcast form, because that's what I do, right? It's like, hey, just get on, we'll chat for 10 or 15 minutes about what's going on in the neighborhood, and we'll post it to Facebook, the Facebook group, so people can see it. Never heard anything back. They finally, I was becoming vocal enough on Facebook that they came to me and they said, or some of the neighbors said, well, you moved into an HOA and you knew that, right? And I'm like, yeah, but when I moved in, they just kind of left us alone. I'd get a notice every once in a while, you need to mow your lawn. So I'd mow my lawn. But then they're like, well, if you want it to change, you need to get involved. And that was the thing, is I don't have time for, and I never wanted to be on the board. I don't have time for, and never wanted to be involved in any of the committees. But I applied to the committees and I ran for the board just so that I could get it. And I was turned away on a repeated basis. And so since there's no other recourse, yeah, I've just been vocal where I can be vocal. And I was hoping to spend the time doing what you guys are doing. So I really appreciate that, because just the last year or so has just been insane. And I just haven't been able to get around to it. But I am fully willing to support this however I can, because I'm sorry, if they want to run the HOA the way they're running it, or not running it, depending on the year, then we should just get rid of it.
No, I fully agree. I mean,
and I'm not sending them $2,000 unless a judge tells me I have to.
Exactly. I wouldn't either. That's the way John and I approach things too. It's like, we've got that banner out in front of our house. We're just daring Parker Brown to send us a violation on it for some, obscure thing that's not really anywhere covered, and just go, okay, well, it's a political statement. Take it as a political sign. You can't regulate that. So, yeah, back off type of thing, or else you're going to wind up in a civil rights lawsuit. I mean, we've lived here, 5.5 years. We've had 6 major incidents with the HOA. Anybody who knows us knows that we would go mow a lawn for our neighbor, or help them fix this, or I went over to one of our neighbors and helped get his kid's Kindle online because they were having problems with the Wi-Fi. That's what we do. Everybody who knows us in person knows we're the nice. John and I are the nicest guys you'll ever meet. We take care of our yard. I always explain to people this: we are the crazy cactus people on Oakcrest. If you drive back by over here and you see a house that has, 70 or 80 cactus out front, that's our place. Now, what about like James, Selena? Do you guys have any questions, any feedback, anything? Let's start with you, James.
Well, to be honest, I have not actually had a run-in with the HOA. Yes, that's what I've been told. I hate the idea of having a third party tell me what I can and can't do with my own property. And that just, I can't have that in my neighborhood. We actually built our house here almost 10 years ago. And so, we're the thing with HOA that we were okay with, as long as they didn't bug us, right? And it seems like that's escalating in our neighborhood, and we can't have that. Like I don't agree with any of their logic and reasoning behind why they're changing their guidelines and their principles. The only thing I can think of is that a lot of those people, they like the idea of having more power and authority over their neighbors. And I'm so against that I'm willing to help you guys out in any way, shape, or form I can. I don't have a lot of resources, to be honest, and I don't have a lot of time these days, but I'll help you out the best I can. If nothing else, I'll get angry on Facebook to help you guys out, because I've heard and seen things that we can't have in our neighborhood. They're just unacceptable. So.
Well, I appreciate that, James. Selena?
Yeah, we've lived here 12 years, and we've had a few minor things with the management companies. Like 10 years ago, I had weeds out in front of my driveway. Well, my daughters had just died, so I don't really care about pulling weeds. I don't care. Then last year, my lawn looked the best it ever looked, because my husband had tweaked the sprinklers and all that stuff. I get a notice, your lawn's dead. I'm like, my lawn's never looked better. I don't know what you're talking about. So I was like, I'm calling them, like, what are you talking about? The lawn looks great. There was one area that was probably the size of a dinner table because something happened with the sprinkler system. I'm like, you're nitpicking that? It's crazy. So.
Selena,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. Again, 10 years ago when your daughter had passed away, if I would have been here in this neighborhood and known that, and you had a weed issue, I would have come over and weeded your yard for you.
Thanks, John.
I'm sure Chuck, you feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the neighbors would have.
Yeah, some of my neighbors did. I told them, because we live on Olive Way. And so I told some of my neighbors, and they came out and helped me. So my biggest thing is I want the HOA to mind their own damn business.
Oh yeah, agreed.
And so I'll be happy to help, like hand out flyers, put 73 signs in my yard, whatever.
I have 5 flyer deliverers that live with me. They're ranging from ages 5 to 15.
Stan lives right down the street from me.
Yeah.
And
Stan lives 2 doors down.
Okay, and exactly, Chuck. I mean, another one of our neighbors down here is like, oh yeah, we could probably, just even his family. He's like, I'm sure we could probably get the whole neighborhood in a day. And I'm going, yeah, but I don't want to put that on just one group of people. Let's try and split it up, and that will help also build some camaraderie between neighbors. Let's try and get people to meet their neighbors if it's not somebody you've met before. I mean, other than Chuck, I may see you guys driving by, I may see you walking by, outside of our home, but generally speaking, I don't know that many people in the neighborhood, or at least had not before this process. And that's so, we want everybody to know. It's like, look, if you need help, reach out to your neighbors, find those neighbors that do what you need help with. You know, we know we have one neighbor specifically that lives like just across the street and around the corner, who, if we have a plumbing issue, he is the one you would go to, and it's great. It's nice being able to, hey, can I pick your brain on this issue or that issue? And, at the same time, when he's had IT issues, I'm the one that he calls, or John is the one that he calls, and for those who haven't figured it out yet, John and I are together. We're just in different parts of the house at the moment. That way we can kind of not be talking over each other and having some of the weird oddness going on if we're sitting on the same screen. But yeah, and forgive me because I don't know who our other visitor is, Galaxy S20 plus 5G. But did you want to ask any questions, have any input?
It's me, Irina. We talked to you earlier this week.
Oh, how are you, Irina?
Good.
So,
No questions. I think we're all good.
well, good.
We just don't need the big brother watching over us.
Agreed. Let's all be adults and be able to be responsible adults, and that's where we're at with it.
Yep.
So I mean, as far going forward, the big dates at the moment are going to be, keep communicating with the board. I mean, that's one of those, even though that deadline is passed for their theoretical deadline has passed for the town hall, keep sending them feedback. Eventually they're going to get the point. The more people that send feedback in of saying, we just want the HOA to go away. That's, I'm sure somebody there at the board, probably Jason or Stan, is sitting there and having to tally, people's opinions or trying and classify them into some kind of information that can be used to then talk to the attorney or talk to the other. As we go forward though and start handing out flyers, another document that I am going to work on is a pro and con sheet that everybody who's handing out flyers can have with them, so that if you get asked a question, and that's the other reason why I'm glad people are here and taking part in this, is that you have the knowledge, you have the understanding of what we're up against, and being able to have that information and say, oh, well, yeah, go here and look up this document and it'll tell you what you need to know. On the website, we've posted even documents. I found an increasingly boring and almost comatose reading document the other day that was a study on home values. To jump to the conclusion, a home that was bought for $200,000 in 2013 and sold in 2018, and this is using the nationwide average, would generate about $32,000 additional value at sale if it does not have an HOA. If it has an HOA, so the HOA is actually costing you money in terms of your home values. Yeah, you're still going to run the risk of having that one house in the neighborhood that looks crappy or just isn't maintained or whatever. But, at the same time, that's where we have the opportunity to have a service project, so to speak. People can go and help. Some of you may have seen on Facebook or Nextdoor, John's mom, Penny, posted about, when she moved in with us and, now wanting to go do some cleanup around the ponds and stuff like that. And again, it's that they're city parks, but let's face it, the city is not going to have the time or resources to come in and do a detailed cleanup. I know so if you're coming in from the second entrance, not the monument entrance, off of Main Street, that first crosswalk where the bike trail crosses over there, there's a plastic pallet that has been in there. It is way in there. in the mud, and it's been there for, I would guess, 5 months.
No, longer. I've seen it there for years, and walking by, just kind of doing the, it's down the slope and in the mud, and you have to be committed to get wet and dirty. And at the point, walking home with the dog or whatever, I'm like, I'm just not committed to get wet and dirty at this very moment. So I mean, it's been there for a long while. It needs to come out. That's just an example of garbage in the ponds, and helping to clean that stuff up would help beautify everything. And it's something we can all do together.
And that's something, John and I have talked about. It's like, we're scuba divers. So for us, slapping on a wetsuit and a pair of booties or a pair of fins or whatever we have to do to go out and get some of the trash that's out in the middle of the wetlands, we can make it work. That's just, one way we can help is being able to, help clean up some of those areas. We've always had a great hatred for the neighborhood dumpsters, because they happen, they're like one day or one weekend, they don't get emptied often enough, people pile stuff up, it ends up getting blown, and of course where they put the dumpsters is right next to the lakes on either side, and all of that debris and garbage gets blown into the wetlands, blown into the mud, blown into the ponds, and it just becomes an eyesore and a mess and a danger to the wildlife at that. So, that's one of those things. And again, that's a circumstance. Several years in a row, we've voted against the dumpsters, and yet they keep happening. And that's a prime example of the board not listening to the membership. The board just doing what the board wants to do for the sake of, they want to do it. And we know of at least one board member who has basically stood up against those dumpsters every time they've been on the board, and they still happen. Those dumpsters are $3,600. You think about how much communication can be provided for $3,600. Website, newsletter, you could do a monthly newsletter probably and not touch that whole $3,600. So that's one of those things. These are all types of things that we can use going forward to people as we're trying to communicate with them. Until we have the flyers out and until we have the yard signs out, I still would encourage you to talk to your neighbors, see if they know, see what they know. Have they read the proposals? If they haven't even read the proposals, stress to them how important it is that they do read them. They need to understand what could potentially change. I understand that there's so much legalese in there, and it makes for very dry reading, and you have to really skip over that. You almost have to skip most of the legalese and just look at the big points. And then you can kind of then understand the other parts of it. But that's something I would stress to our neighbors. As you talk to them, as you're walking around, hey, have you read this? Have you seen this? You know what? Go here, go there, check the Facebook groups, check, if they're members of that, check Nextdoor. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who aren't members of either. And so that's where all of the ground pounding comes in. So.
And as far as where to find the documents, again, the board's saying, hey, go here, and it's some Google Drive. We are reposting those documents on the website. So again, if easy place to remember it, again, disbandthehoa.com, and the documents are there.
And they are unedited documents at that. We've made sure to grab all of those live at the time that they were released, bring them down, put them into a locked PDF, and then go ahead and re-upload those. That way there's no tampering with that.
Well, that's actually a really smart way to go, because what it does is it forces, it'll send people to the Disband the HOA website, and it's easy to refer people to. So we'll make more people aware of this stuff going on too that way.
And that's been that's been why we wanted to have all this stuff in one repository, You know, we'll take this Zoom call. It'll, you know, I probably won't double check it until morning because we've had a long day, but you know, I'll go through, check the video in the morning, make sure everything is recorded and happy and nice, and it'll get uploaded to YouTube and linked back to the website and linked back to every one of the posts about the call, you know, asking people to come to the call. So that way anybody can go and find that video and watch it. The first one didn't, the first Zoom call did not record. We had a technical glitch, which sucked, but okay. The second one did record, and that one, like after the first 2 days, I think we had 44 views. That's 44 people went and watched it. That's, you know, in a neighborhood of 634, I'll take that. I have not gone back and checked the stats in a couple days to see how many more views it's had, but I'm sure that it's had, you know, a few more than that. The change.org petition, which is out there, I think is at 192 signatures now. And so we're
195.
195. Okay. So we're, you know, we're getting up there on that. You know, but these are all minimal things. You know, if we had access to the email list, we would use MailChimp or something like that to get people, you know, send them all, you know, those emails. But unfortunately, we do not have that list. And I don't know that we're going to get the emails from the board. The addresses are public records, so we should be able to get those even if we have to go to the county.
Right. You know, with the addresses of the properties and the owner's name, there is no reason why the board or Parker Brown should be standing in our way and not providing that information. That is all public information, and it is all publicly searchable. It would just be a manual process of having to extract that data out of the county website and do it manually, or we go to the county and basically say, give it to us. Again, public information, there's no reason why they shouldn't just say, here you go.
But if somebody wants to, you know, I know we've had at least 1 or 2 members who've reached out. I have not heard from them that they've had any luck with responses. But if you guys, you know, want to submit an email to the board and just say, hey, look, I'm trying to, you know, work to contact all of our neighbors and just inform them and, you know, help inform them of the whole process, you know, in my own way, and ask them for access to the mailing list. You know, eventually at some point, somebody is going to give it to us. It's just a matter of getting it, because yeah, otherwise it's the go onto the GIS map and go parcel by parcel, click. Okay, that's the names and that's the mailing address. Next one, click, you know, and trying to extrapolate that from 634 homes. I would guess it would be an 8 or 12-hour job, if not more, because it's just going to overwhelm you mentally and drain you to do so. We looked at some other options, including a mail option from USPS called direct to door delivery, which is essentially you can take all of these, you know, pre-printed business materials, take them into the post office, and they would give them to your mail carrier to stuff each box. And it's at a significantly reduced cost. Instead of paying full postage on a letter, which is, you know, what, 50 cents now, I think, per stamp, you're paying, you know, the equivalent of about, I want to say it was like about 12 cents per mailer. But the problem that we have is that our mail carrier, so going out the back alley, all of those homes along there are the same mail carrier, along with there's some businesses on Main Street and some residences. And he also goes all the way down 2300 to where it makes the turn by the air park. So those guys would all receive the flyer too. I want to say it was 600 or 795 homes or something like that that would. So it's an additional 160 homes that would receive something that's not directed at them. I don't know if we want to take that option or not, but you know, definitely I think we need to mail and physically deliver to everyone, you know, various flyers and various communications as we go through this. So, but right now the main thing is getting the mailing list, getting flyers out, getting the signs out, and then making sure everybody is registered for the webinar, you know, where they're going to talk at us, not to us. So, anybody else have any questions, feedback, anything?
Nope. Let's just keep the ball rolling and make sure that we're communicating with each other.
And, you know, my email is listed there on the website, brandon@disbandthehoa.com. You know, even despite COVID, if somebody, one of our cohorts here comes and knocks on the door, you know, we're generally going to answer and be nice about it, you know, especially if we know who you are. Other than that, yeah, we're just moving forward and trying to get as much information out there as possible. And we want to make sure that everybody makes the best decision possible. And I don't see is that you're ever going to get everybody to agree on a set of CCNRs. You're never going to get everybody to agree because it's got to be a 2/3 majority. You're just not going to get it. It took 3 years to pass a fence amendment. It took 3 years or 2 years to pass an animal amendment. Those things are, you know, minimal. Those are just, hey, we're bringing it back to Lehi City Code. This is taking the entire document, dissolving, you know, the corporation and, you know, and disbanding the CCNRs and all of that stuff, or rewriting the CCNRs, which you're never going to get past.
I have a nitpick on that point. The one point with the fence amendment and the animal amendment, they amended those because they didn't want to enforce them. They didn't amend those to bring them up to code with Lehi code. People put those fences in. They should have been fined and either forced to take them out or something because they violated it. And this goes back to the competence issue, right? If they were really serious about enforcing the CCNRs, then those people would have had fines or problems. And instead they said, well, we don't want to make our neighbors mad. And so we're going to go change the amendments. Now, I agreed with both amendments. They needed to change.
Yeah. But
the point is they changed because they didn't want an uprising. They didn't change because they needed to change.
Correct. And that was something that Reed Hassan, you know, flat out admitted the other night, that they were changed in an effort to, because that was a problem. Theoretically, the architectural guidelines should have changed, because when D.R. Horton came in and built all these, you know, the D.R. Horton homes, the design was significantly different. A lot of them do not have any stucco on them. And the color choices were not the same as what the foundation for the CCNRs was. So any house that's other than the grays, tans, taupes, beige, or, you know, those color palettes is in violation. So any home that's blue, red, green, those are all in violation according to the documents. Why they have not felt the need to address that issue,
it's because they selectively enforce this stuff. That's going to be my whole defense if they ever do get around to suing me.
Well, and that's it. That it's such a pick and choose. And then as part of what they wrote in the proposal was, but we also reserve the right to pick and choose and enforce against who, you know, what things we're going to enforce. And just because we let, you know, Jim over there have, you know, this shed that somebody shouldn't have, i.e. the gray shed on the alleyway, that big steel building that, you know, was built. And, you know, that I know was a sore point of contention for everybody in the neighborhood. You know, it was built, the guy who built it went around the process, you know, got the city approval, was told he didn't need HOA approval because the city, you know, approved it, built it. The HOA griped about it. They went to battle, and finally the HOA just backed down because they didn't want to spend the money in a legal fight on it, especially considering that they would have probably lost. That was a point of where we just went, oh, Okay, so now we know how to get around that rule. We'll just go get, if we're going to build something, we'll build something that falls within needing a city permit, get the city permit, ask the city if we need HOA permission. And if they go, nope, the city permit supersedes, great, can you put that in writing? Then if, you get into a lawsuit with the HOA, then you've covered yourself. But that, like you say, that's something that they're selectively enforcing, and they want the right to selectively enforce in the future. And, instead of allowing themselves to create a precedent, instead of saying, oh, well, we wanted these colors, but, we let this one person paint their house, unicorn pink. And so, but we're not going to let anybody else paint their house that color. Well, why did you let the one person do it? Well, we don't have an excuse, but it happened. And, but we can't, allow everybody else to do that, or else we have anarchy. Well, no, you just have to enforce it on one person, and then the problem is solved. But they're not doing that. And that has been the problem. And it doesn't matter what management agency it's been, it does not. This is the thing, is every time we switch management agencies, the quality of care within what happens throughout the neighborhood goes down. Generally that first couple of months, there's a lot, it's overzealous enforcement. And because the board does not make it clear, enforce this, but don't enforce this. Enforce this, but don't enforce this, when they first signed that contract. And again, this goes back to the incompetence level. They're not competently communicating what needs to happen. The enforcement happens, then the board has to go, okay, just cancel that violation. Parker Brown, so apparently some of the ones that have been knocked down, essentially, violation-wise, have quite literally been marked off as a settled, but the violation, even if it was an illegitimate violation, is still listed in the official record for the owner. And again, that's absurd. If they're in the wrong and they know they're in the wrong, there should be a deletion of that line item completely from the record.
For an example, there was one recent post on Facebook. Someone had brought up that they had received a violation with a picture, and they look at the letter and go, wait a minute, that's not even my house. That's my neighbor's house 2 doors down. And they have to consistently call, email, getting no response. And like a month goes by, and then it gets updated as violation settled. When that was totally, beyond a shadow of a doubt, not even a valid violation.
So anyways, but yeah, we'll keep everybody up to date. We'll try and I don't want to get into this being a nightly Zoom call with updates at this point, but I definitely think, a couple times a week, once or twice a week, for now is a good kind of pace, I think, unless somebody thinks we need to have it sooner or less often. I think once we hit that point of we're, just constantly disseminating information, then, I think we're all good. So anyways, I want to thank everybody for being here. We'll get the video posted so others can, benefit from the knowledge and the conversation. And I will put out a call to action via the Facebook group and Nextdoor and all of that stuff. If I don't have your contact info and you want me to, shoot me an email at brandon@disbandthehoa.com and just give me your name and address, and that way I have your physical, address, your mailing address, and your name, and I can add you to a list so that when we get to the point of doing an actual emailer, then we're all good. So other than that, so everybody have a good night, and enjoy what's left of it, and enjoy your rest of your weekend.
All right. Thanks for all your work.
Yeah, you guys are very
Thanks,
welcome.
guys.
Thanks for everybody being here.